Let's dive right into this explainer. When you hear the Bahamas, your mind probably jumps straight to those pristine white sand beaches, massive mega resorts, and, crystal clear turquoise water. But today, we're going to look right past those sunny postcards to uncover the incredibly turbulent yet deeply resilient history of this archipelago. Seriously, I want you to reconsider what you think you know about these islands. Because beneath the surface of all this modern paradise is a stage that has literally hosted massive indigenous empires, violent pirate rebellions, and get this, even high-stakes global espionage. It is an absolute masterclass in survival and adaptation. Section 1. Beyond the tourist postcard. Hidden history. So let's peel back the layers of the modern cruise ship era and look at the history that predates European contact by centuries. Long before millions of tourists started showing up every year, a massive, thriving civilization called the Lucayan Taino called these islands home. We're talking about a population estimated at around 40,000 to 60,000 people right at the time of European contact. That is a bustling society. And the Lucayans weren't just scattered groups, they had an incredibly complex culture. Arriving around 800 to 900 AD in dugout canoes from South America, which is just mind-blowing to think about, they were sophisticated agriculturalists. They lived in settled villages, cultivated crops like corn, beans, and manioc, and built a matrilineal society that actually featured large ceremonial ball courts. They truly engineered their environment to thrive. But, as we know, the arrival of Christopher Columbus at San Salvador in 1492 brought a catastrophic end to this thriving society. Within just 30 years, let that sink in, just 3 decades, this entire population of up to 60,000 Lucayans was effectively destroyed. They were completely decimated by forced enslavement in Spanish mines and the rapid spread of foreign diseases. It's a profoundly tragic turning point, and it actually left the islands mostly empty for over a century. Section 2. The Age of Pirates, a colonial vacuum. Well, with the islands largely depopulated, they essentially became prime real estate for a totally different kind of settler. But here's the thing. Central authority repeatedly failed. After early English settlements in the mid-1600s, the British gained formal control, sure, but they couldn't actually defend the islands. Nassau was repeatedly attacked and left in absolute ruins. This created an administrative black hole, leaving the Bahamas incredibly vulnerable to pirate takeovers. So the crucial point here is that pirates didn't just randomly choose the Bahamas for the nice beaches. It was simple geography and economics. The islands sat right smack on the strategic shipping lanes from North America to the Caribbean and back to Europe. Combine that perfect hiding spot with zero government enforcement and boom, you have the ultimate pirate haven. Now I want you to focus on this number, 100. When the infamous pirate Captain Henry Every sailed into Nassau in 1696, he didn't come alone. He brought a crew of over 100 heavily armed men. They completely outmanned and outgunned whatever local defenses were there. The local governor, Nicholas Trott, took one look, realized fighting was useless, and instead just took bribes to let them stay. The outlaws were officially running the show. Crazy, right?
Moving on to Section 3. Loyalists, Slavery, and Emancipation.
So eventually, the British did crack down on the piracy. But the real demographic and economic transformation of the Bahamas was actually sparked by events way further north. Following the American Revolution in 1783, British loyalists fled the newly formed United States and flooded right into the Bahamas. But they didn't come alone. They brought a massive plantation economy with them, and with it, the brutal reality of the transatlantic slave trade. This fundamentally altered the demographic fabric of the islands forever. The impact was massive. The enslaved African population in the Bahamas literally tripled by the year 1800. They very rapidly outnumbered the white population, and this forced migration, despite its horrific inherent cruelties, laid the absolute foundation for modern Bahamian cultural identity, language, and resilience. Now, the legal path to emancipation was incredibly fraught. Britain banned the slave trade in 1807, but the actual institution of slavery, that continued for decades. When the Slavery Abolition Act finally took effect in 1834, it still included a forced 2-year apprenticeship for the enslaved. And get this, shockingly, the British government paid out massive financial compensation to the slave owners, not the people who had actually been enslaved. Post-abolition life was economically brutal, to say the least. Bahamians had to squeeze a living from wherever they possibly could. Sponge fishing boomed, making up like 80% of exports at one point, until overfishing and a blight completely wiped the industry out by 1900. But, showing incredible adaptability, they pivoted.
They started farming cucumbers in these seemingly useless, salt-infested mudflats and exported them all the way to Chicago. Survival literally meant constant reinvention.
Section 4. The Path to Independence, a Unique Identity.
Entering the 20th century, the Bahamas really began to carve out a unique political and cultural identity on the world stage. And during this era, the Bahamas actually became a massive hotbed for international espionage. I mean, during World War I, there were all these allegations of German U-boats sinking ships and hiding out nearby. Then in World War II, a prominent local leader of German descent was deported, only to be later revealed as an American spy who had been operating for 50 years. No way, right? The islands were basically a crossroads of secrets.
But the true soul of the islands isn't found in those spy stories. It's found in Junkanoo. Today, it's this massive, vibrant festival with elaborate costumes and incredible rhythmic music. But its origins are deeply, deeply profound. It started way back in the late 1700s as Christmas masquerades organized by enslaved Africans. So it's not just a party, it is a living, breathing act of historical resilience and cultural identity.
And you know, that resilience translated directly into a political awakening. From the formation of the Progressive Liberal Party in 1953 to finally gaining universal men's suffrage, the Bahamian people systematically dismantled British colonial rule piece by piece. Finally, on July 19, 1973, they achieved full sovereign independence, officially taking total control of their own destiny. Which brings us to Section 5, Facing the Rising Tide, a Modern Crisis.
Let's see how all of this history builds to the absolute most pressing existential chapter of the Bahamian story today. Right now, over half of the modern Bahamian GDP is entirely dependent on tourism. That means their economy is inextricably linked to their marine environment, the reefs, the beaches, the waters. It makes them highly specialized, sure, but also highly, highly vulnerable to ecological shifts.
And here is the stark geographical reality we have to face. The Bahamas is an archipelago of very low-lying islands, mostly just 1 to 2 meters above sea level. That places them directly in the crosshairs of climate change. Current projections suggest that by 2030, which is just around the corner, a full 1/3 of the islands could be submerged by rising sea levels.
It's a compounding environmental threat. It all just piles up. You've got record-breaking coral bleaching destroying the reefs that protect the shorelines and act as nurseries for 50% of their commercial fish. Add to that the increased intensity of hurricanes, plus severe saltwater intrusion poisoning freshwater supplies, and you've got a full-blown ecological crisis that threatens the very existence of the nation.
Which leaves us with this final massive question. The Bahamian people are the descendants of indigenous empires, resourceful pirates, defiant rebels, and incredibly resilient survivors who literally coaxed life out of salt-infested mudflats. They have weathered centuries of incredibly turbulent history, but can that forged spirit adaptation weather the literal rising tide of climate change? It is a critical ongoing story and one we absolutely should all be paying very close attention to.